McDonald. You got Mac and Mac Birds 365 here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. If you want to hit that like button, feel free to go ahead and do so right about now. I like it when our next guest joins us. Always fun to talk Eagles football with Martin Frank from the Delaware News Journal. Martin, certainly we want to get your read on the matchup between the Chiefs and the Eagles in the Super Bowl. But first, a quick look back. Why do you think it was that the NFL decided that the Philadelphia Eagles should be in the Super Bowl and therefore rigged the championship game against the San Francisco 49ers so as to get the Birds into the big game this year? You got any thoughts as to why the NFL, either through the referees or the scoreboard operator, the Jumbotron operator who didn't show Kyle Shanahan a good enough replay to challenge Devonta Smith's when did this major plan all get hatched and come together at 345 Park Avenue?
Yeah. You know what? I think it was hatched over the summer. I mean, look at all the Eagles. Look at all the quarterbacks the Eagles didn't play this year. You know, the fourth string guy against the 49ers. You know, they missed Dak Prescott. You know, all the other guys along the way. You know. I mean, come on! It was obvious. They were in from the start.
Yeah,
you know, it was the whole season was set up, and you know, Devonta Smith obviously didn't catch that ball, but the NFL they didn't put the replay up in time for Kyle Shanahan to throw the challenge flag. It was just a whole big conspiracy. This is like JFK, basically.
Yeah. It's like the moon landing because, you know, Brock Purdy, when he's going to have surgery, they gotta fix that whole thing to make it seem like it's real. And then, you know, it's ironic. Jody and I are wrestling guys, pro wrestling guys, Martin. So, you know, this is a great turn from the NFL, babyface turn in Philadelphia, because typically they're against the Eagles, I'm told. Every week, the announcers hate the Eagles, you know, but now they're for the Eagles. I don't know who to believe, Martin. Who to believe? They all of a sudden they love the Eagles.
Yeah. I mean, I can't understand why. I guess they don't want Patrick Mahomes going against like a third or fourth string quarterback. They want the Eagles in there.
You know, maybe you tapped into something. They didn't want to see that. They didn't want to see Patrick Mahomes against Brock Purdy. Even if he was healthy. Oh, that would have been a good story, though. That would have been a good story.
Yeah, Brock Purdy was a pretty good story. I know no one wanted to acknowledge it here in Philadelphia because he was coming in town to take on the Eagles, but nationally, that was a pretty good story.
That would have worked. I take it back. I quickly take it back.
I don't know. I think it ran its course, though. I mean, you know.
Well, it certainly ran its course on the sixth play of the game when Tyler Kroft is trying to block Haason Reddick. Let's start there. Haason Reddick, he has been unblockable in the postseason. What a tremendous year. We all talk about A.J. Brown. I think A.J. was the final piece of the puzzle offensively. But Haason Reddick on the defensive side, every bit as important. Who's a bigger part of the success here, Howie Roseman or Nick Sirianni and the coaching staff?
Wow, it's a good question. I mean, like everything Howie touched this year, like turned into gold, basically. Yeah. You know, you trade for A.J. Brown, you out and sign Haason Reddick, you sign James Bradbury. I mean, that guy became a Pro Bowl corner. It's been incredible. And it's kind of like the 2017 season. Every offseason move Howie made that year turned into gold, basically, too. You know, you Patrick Robinson, you have the running backs, LeGarrette Blount and Jay Ajayi. You know, it just all came together. I mean, they both had great years. Sirianni as well, you know, coaching the team to, you know, turning Jalen Hurts into an MVP quarterback. You know, Hurts went 14-1 during the regular season. Everything worked out great. I mean, you couldn't have designed it any better for the Eagles this year. It's been quite a season for everyone involved, top to bottom, definitely.
And another plus for the Eagles is, and they may have Shane Steichen having to take a meeting over the next 24, 48 hours with the Colts, but that's going to be it. Jonathan Gannon here to stay. I would say Steichen is on the outside looking in of getting that Colt job. 3 weeks ago, I think if we had you on and we did a spot, we would have said Eagles are guaranteed to lose at least one of their coordinators, if not both of their coordinators.
Right.
Now it looks like they're both going to end up staying. Does that say anything about the Eagles? Is it just good luck? Is it the fact that the people are actually acknowledging Sirianni as the leader of this group? What do you make of the fact that neither of the Eagle coordinators look like they're going to get an offseason head coaching job?
I think it's just a circumstance. I mean, these guys, they're still pretty young. If this was a year ago, I think, the Houston Texans wanted to hire Gannon, but went with Lovie Smith. And then this year, DeMeco Ryans, he's a former Texans player. He's well liked down there, did a great job with the 49ers defense as well. I mean, he was obviously the pick over Jonathan Gannon. I don't know. It's hard to say. Like, I think next year, both those guys are going to be in demand again. And you never know. I mean, strange things happen. Kind of surprised the Chargers haven't made a move, but maybe, that could still possibly happen if Steichen's the guy they want. There are a lot of things.
They hired? They brought over Kellen Moore.
Kellen Moore. I think about 20 minutes after he was fired by the Cowboys.
Yeah.
They hired him pretty fast. I thought that was a good hire by them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he probably wanted to be with Justin Herbert. We'll see if they can get something going with a better offensive mind. But I think, it's great. The Eagles are probably going to keep their coordinators, which is good. Fans who don't like JG, it's very good. But there's still some dominoes to fall. These new coaches, and we still have to see what happens in Indianapolis and Arizona. They have to populate their staffs, and all of a sudden, well, you don't have room to promote a Brian Johnson. So somebody might be coming for Brian Johnson as a potential offensive coordinator, maybe Kevin Patullo, maybe Denard Wilson on the defensive side of the ball. So they still could lose some coaches. We'll have to see how that shakes out. You can't block guys from taking coordinator jobs. You used to be able to do that in the past. So it's not done yet, but it's looking very, very positive. And hey, if other teams, remember, teams looking for coaches are usually bad teams, bad organizations. Houston, we all like DeMeco Ryans. We remember him from Philadelphia, but they've made bad decision after bad decision after bad decision, and they won't let the GM make the decision. So that's why Jonathan Gannon isn't the head coach down there. So good for the Eagles. Bad organizations make bad decisions. Isn't that's good for Philadelphia?
Yeah, absolutely. Continuity is the best friend, for the Eagles. I mean, they've had Gannon and they've had Steichen for 2 years in a row. You've seen the difference that it's made from last year to this year. I mean, Brian Johnson's been great with Jalen Hurts at quarterback. I mean, they go back. I think Jalen Hurts' father coached Brian Johnson in high school, so they've known each other since Jalen Hurts was like a kid. So, yeah, I mean, if you can keep these guys together as long as possible, Denard Wilson, people rave about him as a defensive backs coach. He's probably going to be a defensive coordinator, his next job, whether that's replacing Gannon if he leaves next year or, somewhere else, I mean, as long as you keep these guys together, I mean, Statlin's the best offensive line coach in the NFL. I mean, I'm sure somebody would love to hire him, but so far he's stayed with the Eagles, going back all the way to the Chip Kelly era. So, it's great. As long as you keep these guys together, that's what they want to do. But it's, like you said, when you have a top team that's in the Super Bowl, other teams are going to want to poach your guys. I mean, look at Andy Reid in Kansas City. He's had several guys come and go, and he's still back there every year. So, what can you say? It's a good situation to have. You want your guys to be in demand, but you also want to keep them.
I think that's one of the things that makes Andy Reid a Hall of Fame coach is his coaching tree. The guys come off Andy Reid's staff and go elsewhere and win. He might be the best coach in the history of the national, number one for developing coaches for other places. You got to stick around a long time to do that. And then he's done just that, but you got to give him the credit he's earned. And two other guys who've earned credit, and we've been lopping credit on top of them, and they deserve it because they earned it, are both Nick Sirianni and Howie Roseman. As we give credit to this staff as good as it is, this is Sirianni's staff. And the reason that Doug Peterson's no longer here, one of the main reasons is they had so much trouble between Doug and his staff and who to promote and who to let go and who to move on. They could never get on the same page completely, Peterson and Howie/Jeffrey. They gave Sirianni a lot of latitude in putting his staff together. A lot of these guys on these staffs have Sirianni ties. It wasn't, Stoutland was we're keeping Jeff Stoutland. You're going to learn to love Jeff Stoutland, Nick Sirianni. But he put this staff together, and for a guy who had no head coaching experience, that's pretty damn impressive. And I think you got to give Howie credit because Howie let him do it. They said, all right, Nick, what do you got for us? Who do you want on your staff? And they put together a staff that's been unbelievably good for 2 straight years. Both guys got to get credit for that, do they not, Martin?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I remember when Sirianni was hired and he named his coordinators, and everyone was like, well, why would he hire a first-time defensive coordinator in Jonathan Gannon? He's not, Sirianni's not a defensive guy. He should get like a veteran guy, like a Jim Schwartz.
Well, the Eagles hired Gannon before they hired Sirianni, so that wasn't a Sirianni.
I mean, I remember like when Doug Peterson got hired, like within like 5 minutes, they announced, Jim Schwartz is going to be his defensive coordinator, and I mean, he was handpicked for Doug, a veteran guy, a new defense. And, to Howie's credit or Nick's credit, he found the right guy in Jonathan Gannon. Like, everyone kind of saw him as an up and coming defensive coach. And sure enough, Nick hired him, took a chance. The guy's like 40 years old, and here he is. I mean, they kind of went like the unconventional route. They didn't go with the veteran defensive coordinator type, and it worked out for them. And, credit to everybody involved for that.
Yeah, that was strange. Nick had a good explanation for that, though. He was like, I think we all, because I was one of those people, I was like, we just got to get some experience on this coaching staff.
I'm right with you on that.
And it's like, well, you can do it other ways. He constantly would talk to Frank Reich and, Mike McCoy that first year, who he's with in San Diego. So it's not like you can't text and call people for advice. They're just not in the building. And he did a good job with that. But yeah, I mean, Jonathan was, under Shane Steichen is only 37 now, I think, 37, 38. So tremendously young coaching. Michael Clay was the youngest coordinator in the NFL. Nick Rollis was the youngest position coach in the NFL. So it worked. But yeah, there were some questions when the Eagles first put this staff together. So Nick Sirianni deserves a lot of credit. And you go all the way back to that 2-5 start, Martin. Man, things turned. Imagine if they lost 2 more in a row. People were already calling for this guy, saying he's not ready for this. They're throwing flowers at him. Where was that? They're throwing jerseys at him in Vegas. I forget where they threw the flowers at him.
Oh, that was at home, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was at home.
Yeah.
It could have went really bad. And all of a sudden, he gives up the play calling, and boom. Like a shooting star, this team took off.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, I went back. I was looking, like, the Eagles played the Chiefs like in week 4 last year, and I think at the time they were 1-2. They won that first game in Atlanta, and then they came home. Lost to the 49ers. That was kind of a bad loss. They didn't play well on offense. And then I think, can't remember, they lost to somebody else. And then here come the Chiefs, and you expect them to blow them out. I mean, the Eagles couldn't stop Mahomes, and he was incredible that day. He threw for like 5 touchdowns. But like Jalen Hurts had a career day. He threw for like almost 400 yards.
Wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, 387. I think that's still his career high. I mean, they were going pretty much toe-to-toe with the Chiefs on offense and everything. And you kind of, they lost, and it kind of got a little away from them at the end. I think it was like 42-30, but they scored a late touchdown to make it a 12-point deficit. But, like, I remember coming away from that game, it's like, wow, Jalen Hurts isn't that bad. I mean, he could possibly work out here. And sure enough, like, they get to 2-5 a few weeks later, and then they turn into a run-based offense, and, they end up making the playoffs, and then he just took off this year. But yeah, I think you could kind of start seeing the seeds of, maybe them turning it around. I mean, it got pretty close, like you mentioned, when they were 2-5. Everyone was calling for Jonathan Gannon's head, and that included one of the players. I mean, Fletcher Cox basically said, "I can't play this defense." And some teams, they listen to the star player instead of the assistant coach, and the assistant coach is the one who leaves. But to their credit, they held it together. They found a way and they made it work, and Fletcher Cox ended up pretty happy. So kudos to them again.
Yeah, you mentioned the fact that the last opponent and the next opponent played within 3 weeks of each other last year. Lost to San Francisco, lost to Dallas in between, then came home and lost that Kansas City game. Yeah, not a great start for the new head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. So let me ask you guys this one. Of the two major decisions that were made early in that season, 2-5-ish around that time, which one was nervier? Turning the play calling over to Shane Steichen, or basically coming out, they didn't say it, but they showed it by their example. We're going back and we're going to run the football. So we did the whole pass thing, and we're 2-5. Our strength is our offensive line. We need to play to our strength. We're going to try and run the football down people's throats, and that surely worked. Which one was a nervier call by Nick Sirianni?
I think it was going to the run-based offense. I mean, a lot of this NFL's a pass-first league. I mean, every team wants to throw the ball up and down the field and everything. And the Eagles said, all right, we're scrapping everything. We're going to run the ball. I think that took a lot of nerve. And it was a gutsy decision because, if that didn't work, I mean, I don't think those guys would have lasted the season, to be honest with you. The defense was a mess, Like I mentioned before, Fletcher Cox was pretty much upset with the defensive coordinator, and that's how mutinies start. Basically, on a lot of teams, like the star player kind of, especially one who's close to the general manager. I mean, Howie Roseman raves about Fletcher Cox. Jeffrey Lurie's a big Fletcher Cox fan. I mean, he could have overthrown the ship right then and there, and if the switch to the run-based offense didn't work, maybe it would have happened. I mean, I'm not sure if those guys would have lasted the season, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I don't think people realize how close it was, Martin, to turning in a negative direction. And part of it, we talked about the youth. Part of it was the youth, because it's easy to say, well, these guys don't know what the hell they're doing. They got no experience. Why are they in this position? Mm-hmm. And, to make that change, and to make the change in the philosophy, and essentially they built the offense around Jalen Hurts better. Stop trying to make him drop back passer, 11 personnel. And I always joke now, it's not a run-based offense, not a pass-based offense. It's a Jalen Hurts-based offense. That's what they did. They tailored the offense around the quarterback. And I think that's difficult for some coaches. We just saw one. We've been talking about it on this show, Martin. Kyle Shanahan. He likes to show off with all the movement and look at me, I'm a genius, and I'm going to fool the other defense, and I'm going to play action. And all of a sudden, Brock Purdy's getting surgery. The Eagles' offense is very simple. It's an RPO-based offense. It's very simple, and they don't get to show the I'm the biggest genius on the planet with the Bill Walsh playbook and the Cheesecake Factory playbook. I'm impressed by the lack of ego with this coaching staff. Do you get that sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And you think about, like, all these coaches that didn't work. I mean, Nathaniel Hackett didn't even last the full year in Denver. I mean, you got to get the players to buy in, and that's the key thing. And that's something, Sirianni did right from the start. I mean, when you have a guy like Jason Kelce, deciding to like not retire and come back because he believes in the coaching staff and he believes in the quarterback. I mean, that says a ton. Brandon Graham, playing or coming back at the age of 34 after torn Achilles. I mean, that says a ton about how they feel about the coaching staff and the team in general. For them to keep coming back, in these circumstances. I mean, Fletcher Cox was released after the end of the year for 3 days. He was a free agent. He could have gone anywhere. He came back for less money. I mean, still a lot of money, but he came back for less money because he wanted to be here, knowing also that he's probably not going to get as much playing time as he was getting before. And look at it. I mean, all these guys bought in, and it's just an incredible thing with, how the Eagles have been so successful this year. You got established veterans accepting this young coaching staff and buying into what they're selling and believing in it. I mean, you see that all across the board. It's really been a remarkable thing this year.
Martin, I've asked this of everybody, in leading up to other Kansas City Chief games on my national show here on Birds 365 when I'm on WIP. Any team that's facing the Kansas City Chiefs, why don't they cover Travis Kelce? It seems to me like he's open every play, and not just open, like wide open. You can't see a defender in the picture on TV. We all know he's the best pass catching tight end in the NFL. He's Kansas City's number one weapon. Yet somehow he gets wide open. What will the Philadelphia Eagles do differently than everybody else has been doing all year long?
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, like everybody knows that the ball is going to be going to Travis Kelce, but I have no idea why that happens. But like every time you watch one of their games, he's like wide open 20, 30 yards down the field over the middle of the field. I mean, it's kind of like, Goddard to some extent, but not nearly as good as, or not yet at Travis Kelce's level. I mean, and you got a quarterback who gets him the ball, like, all these different arm angles. I think that's part of it too. Like, if it was just like an average quarterback, maybe you sack that quarterback before he gets it off, or maybe you hit his arm but Patrick Mahomes has these like incredibly weird arm angles where he could like, he could throw a sidearm pass. He can like spin and throw in the same motion. I think a lot of times, like it's Mahomes keeping those plays alive long enough for Travis Kelce to get open. And, the Chiefs have always had great wide receivers too. So you got to keep an eye on those guys too. You can't obviously sleep on guys like Hardman and, Smith-Schuster and Valdez-Scantling now. So it's really remarkable how they always find ways to get Travis Kelce open. I totally agree with you on that. It's crazy.
Yeah, especially without Tyreek Hill. By the way, Tom Brady announced his retirement again for good. We'll see. By the way, I think this was the 1-year anniversary of his first retirement. So we'll see if we have a second 1-year a 1-year anniversary of a second unretirement. But he claims it's for good. I just wanted to throw that out there. But when it comes to Andy Reid, obviously you know very well, Martin. Boy, man, I look at this. I told Jody in 2012 it was interesting because Nick Sirianni was in Kansas City on that staff, and they won 2 games. And Nick went into Andy, and Andy had David Culley, eventually became the head coach in Houston. Long time wide receiver coach, assistant head coach, and he told Nick he had his guy and good luck basically, and heard good things about Nick Sirianni, but Nick had to go his separate ways and ultimately landed on his feet in San Diego. But of all the things, and there's so many things you can point to with Andy Reid, all the championship games, all the wins. That next year, Kansas City goes from 2 wins without Andy Reid to 11 wins with Andy Reid. This is one of the best coaches of all time. Is that fair to say? Is that hyperbole?
Oh no, it's fair to say. I mean, the guy's an offensive genius. You know, great coach. They've gotten at least as far as the AFC Championship game in each of the last 5 seasons. I mean, that's like Belichickian. You know, I mean, like, he had that stretch. I think that the Patriots got to 7 straight AFC Championship games, maybe like won 3 Super Bowls during that time. They didn't win a 4th, obviously, because that was the Eagles. But still, I mean, you don't see those kind of runs anymore. There's just too much parity in the NFL. The salary cap is what it is. You can't keep teams together. I mean, what the Chiefs have done since Andy Reid has gotten there is incredible. I think he missed the playoffs just once.
10 years, 9 double-digit win seasons, and the 1 year he didn't, he won 9. So he's still over 500.
Right.
9 playoffs, 5 straight championship games.
It's remarkable. And I mean, just compared to what, and the Eagles are probably like, I think I saw something where like they're one of maybe 4 or 5 teams that have been to 3 Super Bowls since 2004.
Mm-hmm.
So, what the Chiefs have done is just incredible. You look at, what the Eagles went through since their last Super Bowl. I mean, they pretty much tore down the entire team, changed coaches. They made the playoffs in a couple of those years, but barely sneaked in for 2 of them. And here they are back. I mean, what they had to go through just to get back to this point 5 years later, which is remarkable in itself. But yet the Chiefs have been there like every year, I would put Andy Reid definitely on that.
And
Mount
Jody
Rushmore
was talking about his
NFL
coaching tree earlier. 11 Andy Reid assistants becoming head coaches in the NFL. 11.
That's unheard of. No other coaches even in close to that neighborhood. I think
Belichick's not
11. Oh, I guarantee you, I'm taking the under. You're setting the under at 10.5. Oh, I take the under.
I mean, even the ones that have become coaches haven't had much
tremendous success. And there's, a lot of Andy. And started with Brad Childress. He made the playoffs, but wasn't a great head coach. John Harbaugh has been a very good head coach. Steve Spagnuolo,
Ron Rivera
he'll be the defensive coordinator. Leslie Frazier wasn't a great head coach, great coordinator. Ron Rivera, pretty good head coach at times. Pat Shurmur, not the best head coach, great coordinator. Todd Bowles, great coordinator, not the best head coach.
Right.
Doug Peterson, and we all know Doug. Sean McDermott's been a solid head coach. Matt Nagy. It was very good early, but kind of fell apart.
There's a bunch of Super Bowl appearances in there, Johnny Mac, of the names you just ran down.
Yeah. And David Culley, who I just mentioned, had the 1 year. That wasn't his fault. I mean, that's a nonsense organization, but it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely better than Belichick's tree. I mean, those guys haven't had any success as head coaches, not that I can think of. So
his best success is his former player in Tennessee, who wasn't really a coach under Belichick, but we'll give him half credit on that one.
And can we give Andy credit for D'Amico Ryans? He had D'Amico.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to do that, definitely.
If you're gonna go there with Belichick, you should go there with Reid too. All right. I just noticed this, Martin, and shame on me that I hadn't noticed it earlier. How many times did the Eagles run the ball against San Francisco last week?
Man.
I already forgotten that game. That was such a nonsense game. But I can look it up real quick.
Let's see. I know Kenny Gainwell led him with 48 yards. I think he had maybe 14 carries. I think Hurts
44,
had like 11.
44
and
times.
I think Miles had about 11 or 12 as well. So that's what, 35 maybe?
Yeah, 44.
44
official number.
44 running attempts. Would you like to take a guess how many times they ran the ball against the New York Giants the week before?
A crap load.
Much less.
No.
Well, they ran for 268. So.
Oh wait, I'm thinking. I was sorry. I was thinking about that last regular season game. Yeah. So probably about the same, right?
44. They've run the ball 44 times, 2 consecutive games, 2 consecutive blowout wins. Can they run it 44 times against the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl with the same exact result?
Well, they might try. I mean, sometimes the best offense against the Chiefs is to keep them off the field. So if you can control the ball and keep Pat Mahomes off the field, keep him from having the chance to throw to Travis Kelce, that's not a bad formula. So for that to happen, I mean, they got to get an early lead. They did that both against the Giants, and the 49ers. So, and then once you do that, they have the running game that can kind of keep the ball and everything like that. So, yeah, I think if they ran the ball 44 times against the Chiefs, I think Eagles fans would be pretty happy with that.
Yeah, that means you're going to blow them out is basically
Yeah.
what that means, because that means you got a big lead late and you're just running out the clock, and that's how those things kind of manifest itself. So I'll leave it there with you. M. Frank NFL, Martin Frank, the great Martin Frank, DelawareOnline.com. You can read them there. I was looking at the rosters of these two teams, and Ed Kratz, your buddy and mine, we're putting together a top 15 list of players in the Super Bowl. And I'm like, wow. I mean, Kansas City has some really good players at the top. Patrick Mahomes, Chris Jones, Travis Kelce, we mentioned a little bit. But, man, the Eagles are much, much deeper than this team. If there is going to be a blowout, it's got to be an Eagles blowout. Don't you think, Martin?
Yeah. I like the Chiefs defense. I mean, I think Chris Jones is amazing. He could be every bit as much of a game wrecker as Haason Reddick. But beyond that, like there are things the Eagles can exploit. And on the other side, they're going to go after Patrick Mahomes. I mean, I know Andy Reid's philosophy is always to have a great offensive line, and they do have a strong offensive line, and they'll try to protect him and stuff. But, if there's any way the Eagles defense can find a way to slow down Patrick Mahomes a little bit, I think the Eagles will be able to score on them. And if that's the case, then they can run away with this for sure.
Martin, are you heading out to Arizona, or are we going to be able to get you up next week leading up to the game as well? Or when we call you at 5:20 in the morning, are you going to go, it's Birds 365? I'm not answering that phone. Get the hell out of here.
Martin's not answering the phone.
I can't be in Arizona, heading out there on Sunday and everything. So, I might still be on East Coast time. So if you want to get me at 5:20 in the morning, we'll see. I might pick up.
We will at least make the attempt. Martin,
we'll wait till 6:20, Martin.
All right. That. Well, even better.
Martin, we appreciate whenever you come on. Thanks for doing it today. And yeah, maybe we'll talk to you next week from Arizona.
All right. My pleasure. And yeah, I can't guarantee I'll pick up the phone, but sure. We'll see.
Yeah, with our luck, we'll call Martin. Will be out for a walk at 6:20 in the morning. We get screwed by Martin Frank's exercises. Martin, thanks, bud. Appreciate it.
All right, see you guys.
Frank covers the Eagles for the Delaware News Journal. Jumping in with us here on Birds 365. All right, Johnny Mac told you NFL news, not necessarily Eagle news, but we can spin it into Eagle news. Tom Brady officially retires. He did so. And if you remember, Johnny Mac, you and I were here last year when it happened. I was kind of surprised that Brady retired because he didn't announce it. Adam Schefter announced it. And I'll stand by this. And maybe Brady will do a tell-all documentary a year from now, 2 years from now, 4 years from now, where he may cop to it. I think he came back and played last year because he was like,
"Fight him."
Yeah. You're not telling me when I'm retired. I'm telling you when I'm retired. I think that added to his decision to come back and play last year. I really do. So I'm not surprised a little bit that he on social media announced his own retirement to beat Adam Schefter or any of the other NFL insiders to say whether Brady is or isn't playing again this year. It doesn't surprise me that he's retiring. But it does have a residual effect on Eagles and every other team in the National Football League. Like him, love him, hate him, whatever. He was still a viable quarterback in this league this past year. He did a good job for the Bucs. The Bucs defense got old. Their offensive line started falling apart. There's a reason that they lost in the playoffs this year to the Cowboys. It wasn't Tom Brady. That's just one less quarterback in the NFL. I'll tell you guys who are happy today. Derek Carr, Aaron Rodgers, if he wants out of Green Bay. The open quarterback market just got deleted by one, which means anybody who's going to be on it, their value just went up a little bit because Tom is no longer a factor with any of those teams. Maybe even a guy like Gardner Minshew, who will be hitting the open market. When we talk about the Eagle free agents, John, do we ever get the Gardner Minshew on the list?
Yeah, well, yeah, he's not going to be back. I mean, but he's way down on the list. I don't think anybody's concerned about it, but the Eagles are probably concerned about it because they, we talk about it all the time. They value the backup quarterback position, rightfully so, more than most. And again, bad organizations, they don't think about things like that. And but he wants a chance and an opportunity to be a starter somewhere. And maybe he does, but and I'm a bigger Gardner guy than you are. We've had this discussion in the past. I've always said, look, I think he's one of the best 32 quarterbacks in the world, only because there aren't 32 good quarterbacks. And once you get down to that bottom five, there's some pretty bad quarterbacks. What you can't do, though, is sell Gardner Minshew to your fan base as the long-term answer. So nobody's going to go after Gardner Minshew and this is our starter. This is, they're not going to do that. But if they can't get Aaron Rodgers and they can't get Derek Carr and they can't get somebody in the draft and they're up against it, it might be plan C or plan D for a year or two. And then when you get on the field, the luxury of playing time is nobody is taking you off the field if you play well. So then it's up to you. That's what happened with Jalen Hurts. I got news for people. The Eagles were not only looking at Russell Wilson, not only looking at Deshaun Watson. There's a reason why they kicked that first-round pick back a year, because they didn't like this draft like everybody else at the quarterback position. It was their insurance policy, their safety net. There's a reason they did all this. But what Jalen Hurts got was another year, the opportunity to be on the field with a really good team. He took off. Now he's going to make insert number, $40 million a year, whatever it ends up being. If you're on the field, and I'm not trying to compare Gardner Minshew to Jalen Hurts because he's not going to be Jalen Hurts, but I'm comparing the opportunity. If you're on the field and you play well, nobody's taking you off the field. Same thing with Brock Purdy. If he continued to play well, Trey Lance, 3rd overall pick. All right, F you. I always talk about F you players. If you play well, nobody's taking you off the field.
That is very true, and your description of Jalen Hurts is very much on point. Yeah, I'll go ahead and predict that that's not happening for Gardner Minshew. If he gets the opportunity somewhere else, he won't be the next Jalen Hurts or Brock Purdy or anybody else for that reason who snatched that opportunity and made the most of it. He'll snatch it and he'll just hand it right back again because I'm not a fan of his game. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald, the Mac guys here on Birds 365. We'll come back. We'll continue the Chiefs, the Eagles conversation, even the Brady conversation. And we will have a conversation with one Rob Ellis coming up in less than 20 minutes if you stay here on Birds.